When you sleep, sleep. When you eat, eat. When you walk, walk. When you sit, sit. These simple words, attributed to various Zen masters throughout history, contain one of the most profound and practical teachings ever offered to humanity. Yet in our hyper-connected, multitasking world, this ancient wisdom feels almost revolutionary. What does it mean to truly do one thing at a time? Why do the greatest spiritual teachers across cultures return again and again to this principle of singular focus? And how can mastering this simple practice transform not just your productivity, but your entire relationship with existence itself? The teaching appears deceptively simple, almost childlike in its directness. But like all great Zen koans, its simplicity conceals depths that have occupied spiritual practitioners for over 1,000 years. To understand why, when you sleep, sleep is considered one of the highest teachings, we need to explore what it really means to be fully present in a single activity. If this is speaking to you, take a moment and subscribe. Thank you. The Zen Foundation, Understanding Pure Activity. In traditional Zen Buddhism, this teaching emerges from the concept of shikantaza, just sitting. But the principle extends far beyond meditation to encompass what Zen calls pure activity, engaging completely with whatever you're doing without the overlay of mental commentary, judgment, or distraction. The great Zen master Dogen, founder of Soto Zen in Japan, taught that enlightenment isn't something you achieve through meditation. It's something you express through complete engagement with each moment. When you sit in meditation, you're not trying to become enlightened. You're expressing your already present Buddha nature through the act of sitting itself. This understanding revolutionizes how we approach every activity. Eating becomes a spiritual practice when you eat completely, tasting each bite, feeling the texture, experiencing hunger and satisfaction without mental narrative. Sleeping becomes sacred when you surrender completely to rest without the mind's tendency to replay the day or plan tomorrow. The Chinese Zen master Yunmen was famous for his direct, uncompromising teachings about presence. When a student asked him about the essence of Buddhism, he replied, "An appropriate response." When you're eating, eating is the appropriate response. When you're sleeping, sleeping is the appropriate response. Nothing more, nothing less. This teaching directly challenges our habitual way of living. Most of us eat while scrolling through phones, sleep while minds race with worry, and walk while lost in mental conversations. We've become experts at doing multiple things simultaneously while being fully present for none of them. The psychological revolution, single tasking in a multitasking world. Modern neuroscience confirms what Zen masters understood intuitively. The human brain cannot actually multitask. What we call multitasking is really rapid task switching, and each switch comes with a cognitive cost. Studies show that people who frequently multitask experience decreased ability to concentrate, increased stress hormones, and reduced overall performance on individual tasks. Dr. Earl Miller, a neuroscientist at MIT, explains that when we try to focus on multiple things simultaneously, the brain's prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, becomes overloaded. The result is what researchers call attention residue. Part of your attention remains stuck on the previous task even after switching to a new one. The Zen practice of doing one thing completely offers a neurological reset. When you engage fully with a single activity, the brain's default mode network, associated with mind-wandering, self-referential thinking and rumination, becomes less active. This creates what neuroscientists call a flow state, characterized by effortless concentration, decreased self-consciousness, and increased well-being. But the psychological benefits go deeper than improved focus. The practice of singular attention fundamentally changes your relationship with time itself. When you're fully present in an activity, time seems to both slow down and speed up simultaneously. You experience what the psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls temporal transformation. The sense that time becomes irrelevant because you're so absorbed in the present moment. This temporal shift has profound implications for anxiety and depression. Most psychological suffering involves either rumination about the past or worry about the future. When you're completely engaged in eating, sleeping, or walking, there's no mental space for these temporal escapes from the present. The simple act of full presence becomes a powerful antidote to suffering. Historical development, from Buddha to modern mindfulness. The teaching, when you sleep, didn't emerge in isolation, but represents the culmination of thousands of years of contemplative insight across multiple traditions. The Buddha himself spoke of mindfulness in all activities, maintaining awareness whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. The early Buddhist text, the Satipatthana Sutta, describes this comprehensive mindfulness. When going forward or turning back, he makes himself aware of what he is doing. When looking straight ahead or looking around, when bending or stretching, when wearing robes or carrying the outer robe and bowl, when eating, drinking, chewing or savoring, when urinating or defecating, when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, speaking or remaining silent, he makes himself aware of what he is doing. This foundation influenced the development of Zen in China, where Taoist concepts of natural action merged with Buddhist mindfulness. The Chinese character for Zen, Chan, comes from the Sanskrit dhyana, meaning meditation, but Chinese Zen masters expanded this to include all activities as meditation. The famous Zen master Baizhang established monastic rules based on the principle, a day without work is a day without eating. This wasn't about productivity, but about treating every activity, sweeping, cooking, gardening, as equal to formal sitting meditation. His student Huangbo taught that ordinary activities, performed with complete attention, are themselves the highest spiritual practice. During the Tang dynasty, this teaching reached its most refined expression in the poetry and teachings of masters like Joshu and Yunmen. They demonstrated through their daily actions that enlightenment isn't a special state to be attained, but the natural result of complete engagement with whatever life presents. When Zen traveled to Japan, masters like Eisai and Dogen further refined these teachings. Dogen's concept of being time suggests that when you're fully present in an activity, you become one with time itself rather than feeling controlled or constrained by it. His instructions for eating in the monastery emphasize complete attention to each aspect of the meal: the visual appearance, the aroma, the taste, the chewing, the swallowing. The art of eating, a case study in complete presence. To understand the depth of this teaching, let's explore what it really means to, when you eat. Most of us have completely lost touch with the experience of eating. We consume food while reading, watching screens, driving, or engaging in conversation. We eat quickly, barely tasting our food, often finishing meals without any real awareness of what or how much we consumed. The Zen approach to eating, developed in monastery settings but applicable anywhere, transforms this unconscious consumption into a meditation practice. It begins before the food reaches your mouth, with awareness of hunger, appreciation for the food's availability, and recognition of all the conditions that brought this meal to you. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh developed detailed instructions for mindful eating based on traditional Zen principles. He suggests beginning each meal with a brief contemplation of the interconnected web of conditions that produced your food: the soil, rain, sunshine, farmers, transportation systems, and countless other factors. This isn't intellectual gratitude, but visceral recognition of your fundamental interdependence with all of existence. As you lift food to your mouth, the practice involves complete attention to the movement of your arm, the coordination between hand and mouth, the visual appearance of the food. When the food touches your tongue, you experience its temperature, texture, and initial taste without immediately chewing and swallowing. The chewing process becomes an opportunity for deep presence. Most people chew just enough to avoid choking, but mindful eating involves thorough chewing while paying attention to how flavors change and develop. You notice when the urge to swallow arises and can choose to continue chewing or to swallow consciously rather than automatically. Between bites, there's space for awareness, noticing hunger levels, appreciating tastes that linger, observing any tendency to reach immediately for the next bite. This isn't about eating slowly for health reasons, though that's often a side effect, but about using eating as a gateway to complete presence. Traditional Zen monasteries include periods of silent eating where this practice can be cultivated without social distractions. But the same principles apply when eating with others. You can be fully present with your food while also being socially engaged, though this requires greater skill and practice. The practice reveals how much of our eating is driven by habit, emotion, and unconscious patterns rather than actual physical needs. When you eat with complete attention, you naturally begin eating when truly hungry and stopping when satisfied, because you're actually present for these subtle bodily signals that usually get overridden by mental activity. The sacred act of sleep, surrendering to rest. When you sleep might be the most challenging aspect of this teaching for modern practitioners. Sleep has become another arena for mental activity. We fall asleep listening to podcasts, wake up checking phones, and spend the transition periods between sleep and waking lost in mental planning or worry. The Zen approach to sleep treats the transition into rest as a spiritual practice equal to any formal meditation. It begins with preparing the sleeping space mindfully, adjusting pillows, blankets, and room temperature with the same attention you might bring to arranging an altar. As you lie down, there's an opportunity to practice what Zen calls letting go of the day. This isn't about reviewing events or making mental lists for tomorrow, but about consciously releasing the mental activity that characterizes waking consciousness. The breath becomes an anchor, not through any special breathing technique, but through simple awareness of the natural rhythm of inhalation and exhalation. The Japanese Zen tradition includes specific teachings about the moments between waking and sleeping. These threshold states are considered particularly conducive to spiritual insight because the usual mental patterns are loosened. Instead of immediately reaching for stimulation or distraction when waking, there's an opportunity to rest in the natural spaciousness of consciousness before the day's activities begin. During sleep itself, the practice continues through what's called dream yoga in Tibetan Buddhism and similar concepts in Zen. While you can't control what dreams arise, you can cultivate an attitude of non-attachment and awareness that sometimes carries over into sleep states. Advanced practitioners report maintaining some degree of lucid awareness even during deep sleep. The quality of sleep naturally improves when you approach it as a spiritual practice rather than merely a biological necessity. Research shows that people who practice mindfulness have better sleep quality, fall asleep more quickly, and wake up more refreshed. This isn't because of any special technique, but because of the reduced mental agitation that comes from cultivating present moment awareness throughout the day. Waking up also becomes an opportunity for practice. Instead of immediately reaching for phones or beginning mental planning, there's space for appreciating the transition from unconsciousness to consciousness, for noticing how the body feels, for setting an intention to maintain awareness throughout the coming day. Walking meditation, every step as enlightenment. The instruction, when you walk, transforms one of our most automatic activities into a profound spiritual practice. Most walking happens unconsciously. We're mentally elsewhere while our bodies navigate familiar routes. Zen walking meditation, or kinhin, brings complete awareness to this fundamental human activity. Traditional kinhin, practiced in monasteries between periods of sitting meditation, involves extremely slow, deliberate steps coordinated with breathing. But the principle applies to walking at any pace. What matters is complete attention to the physical sensations and mental state of walking. Walking meditation begins with standing still and feeling your connection to the ground. There's awareness of weight distribution between your feet, the sensations of standing upright, the subtle adjustments your body makes to maintain balance. This foundation of stillness and awareness then extends into movement. As you begin walking, attention goes to the complex coordination involved in lifting one foot, shifting weight to the other, placing the foot down, and repeating this process. What seems like simple, automatic movement reveals itself as an intricate dance of balance, coordination, and spatial awareness. The pace becomes naturally slower when you're paying complete attention, not because slowness is required, but because awareness takes time to develop. You might notice the sensation of air moving past your body, the sounds your footsteps make, the way your arms naturally swing to maintain balance. Environmental awareness becomes part of the practice, noticing changes in terrain, temperature, lighting, or sound without losing connection to the physical sensations of walking. This develops what Zen calls panoramic awareness, the ability to be simultaneously focused and broadly aware. Walking meditation is particularly valuable because it bridges formal sitting practice with daily activity. You can practice mindful walking while going to work, walking in nature, or moving around your home. The key is transforming routine movement into conscious movement. The Vietnamese master Thich Nhat Hanh created the beautiful phrase, walking on the earth like kissing it with your feet. This poetic instruction captures the attitude of reverence and tenderness that can inform every step when walking becomes a spiritual practice. Sitting practice, the foundation of all activity. While the teaching emphasizes bringing awareness to all activities, sitting meditation remains the foundation that makes this possible. When you sit refers both to formal meditation practice and to the quality of complete presence that can inform any moment of sitting throughout the day. In formal sitting practice, zazen, the instruction is remarkably simple. Sit upright, breathe naturally, and when thoughts arise, neither follow them nor push them away. This sounds easy, but proves to be one of the most challenging practices because it goes against our habitual patterns of mental activity. The posture itself becomes a teacher. Sitting upright without rigid tension creates a physical foundation for mental alertness and relaxation. The spine naturally curves, supporting the head without strain. The hands rest in a mudra that creates a closed energy circuit. The eyes remain slightly open, gazing downward, maintaining a connection to the immediate environment while not being distracted by visual stimuli. Breathing happens naturally without manipulation or control. The attention rests lightly on the breath, not as a concentration exercise, but as a way of staying connected to the present moment. When the mind wanders, which it inevitably will, you simply notice the wandering and gently return attention to breathing and sitting. This practice of just sitting trains the quality of awareness that makes it possible to eat completely, sleep completely, or walk completely. It develops what Zen calls beginner's mind, the ability to approach each moment with fresh awareness rather than through the filter of past experience and future expectations. The benefits of sitting practice extend far beyond the formal meditation period. Regular practitioners report increased ability to remain calm in stressful situations, improved concentration in work or study, and a general sense of being more present in relationships and daily activities. But the deepest benefit of sitting practice is what Zen calls realization of Buddha nature. The recognition that your true nature is already complete and perfect, requiring nothing additional. This isn't a philosophical concept, but a direct experience that arises from sustained practice of complete presence. The philosophy behind presence, why one thing at a time? The teaching to do one thing at a time isn't arbitrary, but reflects deep insights about the nature of consciousness and reality itself. From a Zen perspective, the fragmented, multitasking mind is what creates the sense of separation between self and world that causes suffering. When you're completely present in an activity, the boundaries between self and activity begin to dissolve. You're no longer someone eating food, but rather the entire process of eating. You're not someone walking, but the complete experience of walking. This dissolution of subject-object duality is what Zen calls emptiness. Not nothingness, but the absence of fixed, separate selfhood. The contemporary Zen teacher Charlotte Joko Beck explained this beautifully. When we're truly present, there's no me having an experience, there's just the experience itself. This isn't a mystical state reserved for advanced practitioners, but the natural result of giving complete attention to whatever you're doing. This understanding challenges our usual way of experiencing life as a collection of separate events happening to a central self. Instead, life reveals itself as a flowing, interconnected process in which you participate rather than observe from outside. The practice of doing one thing at a time trains this participatory awareness. The fragmentation that characterizes normal consciousness, thinking about one thing while doing another, planning the future while engaged in present activity, creates what Buddhist psychology calls dukkha or suffering. This suffering isn't primarily about external circumstances, but about the internal division created by scattered attention. When attention becomes unified through single-pointed focus, this internal division naturally heals. You experience what the mystics call union, not as a special altered state, but as the natural condition that becomes apparent when mental fragmentation ceases. Obstacles and challenges. Why this simple teaching is so difficult. Despite its apparent simplicity, practicing, when you sleep, reveals numerous obstacles that most people encounter. Understanding these challenges is crucial for developing a sustainable practice. The first major obstacle is what Buddhist psychology calls restlessness, the mind's addiction to stimulation and activity. Most of us have become habituated to constant mental stimulation through media, internal dialogue, or worry. The prospect of doing just one thing completely can initially feel boring or anxiety-provoking. This restlessness often manifests as the feeling that single-tasking is inefficient or wasteful. Our culture heavily rewards multitasking and productivity, so slowing down to do one thing completely can trigger guilt or anxiety about falling behind. The practice requires recognizing that this cultural conditioning conflicts with natural human consciousness, which operates most effectively with focused attention. The second major obstacle is what Zen calls monkey mind, the tendency for thoughts to jump rapidly from topic to topic like a monkey swinging through trees. When you try to eat completely, the mind might start planning tomorrow's schedule. When you try to walk mindfully, mental conversations begin. This isn't a sign of failure, but the normal condition of untrained consciousness. Working with monkey mind requires patience and gentleness. The instruction isn't to stop thoughts, but to notice when attention has wandered and gently return it to the present activity. Each return is a moment of awakening, regardless of how many times the mind wanders. A third obstacle is perfectionism, the belief that you should be able to maintain perfect focus immediately. This creates a subtle form of violence against your own experience, judging and criticizing the natural learning process. The Zen approach emphasizes beginner's mind, approaching each moment of practice with curiosity and acceptance rather than demanding immediate results. Physical discomfort can also become an obstacle, particularly in sitting practice, or when eating more slowly than usual. The key is learning to distinguish between genuine physical needs and the mind's resistance to slowing down. Sometimes discomfort signals a need to adjust posture or pace. Other times it's simply the mind's resistance to unfamiliar territory. Fear of missing out is a particularly modern obstacle. When eating without distraction, you might fear missing important messages or information. When sleeping without mental planning, you might worry about forgetting important tasks. These fears usually prove unfounded. Present moment awareness actually improves memory and decision-making while reducing the anxiety that comes from constant mental fragmentation. Integration with daily life, making every moment practice. The ultimate goal of this teaching isn't to create special, mindful moments separated from ordinary life, but to transform all activities into opportunities for awakening. This integration requires skill and patience as you learn to apply the principles of single-pointed attention to increasingly complex situations. Starting with simple, solitary activities provides a foundation for more challenging applications. Eating alone mindfully is easier than eating mindfully while having dinner conversation with family. Walking meditation in a quiet park is simpler than maintaining awareness while navigating busy city streets. The key to integration is what Zen calls flexible rigidity, maintaining the core principle of complete presence while adapting the form to different circumstances. You can be fully present during a business meeting while also being socially appropriate and professionally effective. The skill lies in learning to hold multiple aspects of a situation in awareness simultaneously rather than fragmenting attention between competing demands. Technology presents particular challenges for integration. Phones, computers, and other devices are designed to capture and scatter attention. Developing a mindful relationship with technology might involve designated times for checking messages, single tasking when using devices, or regularly taking breaks from electronic stimulation. Social interactions require special consideration because Western culture often treats conversation as an opportunity for multitasking. Thinking about what to say next while the other person is speaking, or having mental commentary about the interaction while it's happening. Mindful conversation involves complete attention to the other person while also being aware of your own responses and reactions. Work environments can seem antithetical to single-pointed attention, especially jobs that explicitly require multitasking. However, even in complex work situations, you can practice doing one thing at a time by giving complete attention to whatever task is most important in each moment, then shifting attention completely to the next priority rather than trying to hold multiple concerns simultaneously. Scientific validation. What research reveals about singular focus. Contemporary neuroscience and psychology research provides fascinating validation for ancient Zen insights about the benefits of doing one thing at a time. Brain imaging studies show that focused attention creates measurable changes in brain structure and function that support well-being, creativity, and cognitive performance. Dr. Judson Brewer's research at Yale University demonstrates that mindfulness practices, including single-tasking meditation, reduce activity in the brain's default mode network. The regions associated with self-referential thinking, rumination, and unhappiness. When people practice focused attention on single activities, these brain regions become less active, correlating with reports of increased well-being and reduced anxiety. Studies on flow states, conducted by researchers like Arne Dietrich, show that complete absorption in single activities is associated with what neuroscientists call transient hypofrontality, temporary downregulation of the prefrontal cortex regions responsible for self-criticism and temporal thinking. This creates the sense of effortless performance and timelessness that characterizes optimal experience. Research on attention training demonstrates that practices involving sustained focus on single objects or activities strengthen neural networks associated with concentration while reducing reactivity to distractions. A study by Yuan Tang found that just 5 days of meditation training, focused on single-pointed attention, created measurable improvements in attention regulation and stress reduction. The psychological research on multitasking consistently shows negative effects on performance, stress levels, and well-being. Dr. Sophie Leroy's work on attention residue demonstrates that when people switch between tasks, part of their attention remains stuck on the previous task, reducing performance on the current activity. Single tasking eliminates this cognitive burden. Studies on mindful eating show that people who eat with complete attention naturally regulate food intake more effectively, experience greater satisfaction from meals, and have improved digestion. This isn't because of conscious dietary restriction, but because present moment awareness allows natural hunger and satiety signals to function properly. Sleep research indicates that people who practice mindfulness throughout the day have better sleep quality, fall asleep more quickly, and experience less sleep fragmentation. Dr. Willoughby Britton's research suggests that daytime mindfulness practices create a natural transition into the relaxed awareness conducive to healthy sleep. Advanced practice, beyond technique to natural awareness. As practice matures, the instruction, when you sleep, sleep evolves from a technique to be applied to a natural way of being. Advanced practitioners report that single-pointed attention becomes effortless, not because they've mastered a skill, but because they've removed the habitual patterns that create fragmentation. This natural awareness is characterized by what Zen calls effortless effort, complete engagement without strain or forcing. Activities happen with full attention, but without the sense of someone trying to maintain attention. There's participation without separation, focus without tension. The boundaries between formal practice and daily life disappear at this stage. Sitting meditation, eating, walking, working, and sleeping all express the same quality of complete presence. This isn't uniformity, but rather the recognition that all activities offer equal opportunities for awakening when approached with appropriate attention. Advanced practitioners often report that time becomes more spacious even while accomplishing more. This apparent paradox reflects the efficiency that naturally arises from undivided attention combined with the temporal expansion that comes from present moment awareness. The deepest stages of practice involve what Zen calls ordinary mind is the way. The realization that complete presence in simple activities is itself enlightenment rather than a path toward some future attainment. Eating completely is Buddha nature expressing itself as eating. Sleeping completely is Buddha nature expressing itself as sleeping. This understanding transforms the entire approach to practice. Instead of using activities as means to develop awareness, you recognize that activities and awareness are not separate. The goal becomes expressing your already present awakeness through whatever life offers rather than trying to achieve some special state. Contemporary applications, healing modern fragmentation. In our hyper-connected age, the teaching, when you sleep, sleep, offers medicine for what might be called the epidemic of attention fragmentation. The average person checks their phone over 80 times per day, experiences constant information overload, and rarely engages in sustained, focused activity. This fragmentation has measurable effects on mental health, relationships, creativity, and overall life satisfaction. The practice of doing one thing completely offers a direct antidote to these modern challenges while connecting us to ancient wisdom about human flourishing. For students and professionals struggling with concentration, single-tasking practice can dramatically improve both performance and satisfaction. Instead of trying to study while simultaneously managing social media, messages, and background entertainment, complete focus on one subject at a time proves more effective and less exhausting. In relationships, the practice of complete presence transforms communication and intimacy. When you're fully present during conversations, not planning responses or checking devices, deeper connection naturally emerges. Partners often report feeling more heard and understood when their companions practice undivided attention. For parents, modeling single-pointed attention provides children with a powerful example of how to engage fully with life. Children naturally practice complete presence until taught otherwise by adult multitasking patterns. Returning to this natural way of being benefits entire families. Creative professionals find that single tasking unlocks deeper levels of inspiration and innovation. The mind's creative capacities function optimally when not divided between multiple concerns. Writers, artists, and musicians who practice focused attention often report accessing new levels of creative flow. The ultimate teaching: simplicity as sophistication. The profound teaching hidden within, when you sleep, is that enlightenment isn't exotic or complicated, but utterly simple and immediately available. Every moment offers the opportunity for complete awakening through complete participation in whatever is actually happening. This challenges common misconceptions about spiritual practice as something separate from ordinary life, requiring special techniques, altered states, or years of preparation. The Zen approach suggests that Buddha nature is already fully present and expresses itself naturally through undivided attention to simple activities. The sophistication lies not in complexity, but in the courage to be completely simple. To eat when eating without mental commentary. To sleep when sleeping without mental planning. To be present for life as it actually unfolds rather than as we think it should unfold. This simplicity requires tremendous trust. Trust that complete presence in this moment is sufficient. Trust that life itself will provide whatever guidance is needed. Trust that awareness is more intelligent than mental analysis and planning. The ultimate fruit of this practice is what Zen calls no mind. Not the absence of thinking, but the absence of unnecessary thinking. The mind becomes a tool that functions brilliantly when needed and rests quietly when not needed, rather than the constant internal chatter that characterizes most human experience. In this natural state, activities happen with spontaneous appropriateness. You naturally know when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait, when to engage and when to rest. This isn't because you've developed special powers, but because you've removed the mental noise that obscures natural wisdom. The teaching, when you sleep ultimately points to the radical possibility of living with complete sanity in an often insane world, finding perfect peace in imperfect circumstances, and discovering that the awakening you seek is already present in the simple act of being completely here, completely now, completely engaged with whatever life offers in this moment.